It's one of the most common questions asked when the conversation turns to the Palestine-Israel conflict, and that question is, why does peace always fail? The short answer to the question is quite simple. It fails because the indigenous people of the land prior to 1948 didn't want their land taken from them, and their children and grandchildren don't want to give up that land to what they see as foreign intervention states inserting themselves in a region that was never theirs to intervene in or dictate how things should go in the first place. Even our current president, Joe Biden, said this about the state of Israel.
If we look at the Middle East, I think it's about time we stop, those of us who support, as most of us do, Israel in this body, for apologizing for our support for Israel. There's no apology to be made. None. It is the best $3 billion investment we make. Whether or not in Israel, the United States of America would have to invent an Israel to protect her interest in the region. The United States would have to go out and invent an Israel.
Attempts to frame the Palestine-Israel conflict as a conflict based on religion is not correct. There is plenty of historical evidence that shows that the Arab world actually provided safe haven for Jews prior to World War I and during the Dark Ages in Europe, when Jews were being targeted for their religious beliefs. This is not a conflict purely based on religion. This is a conflict based on land being taken from the indigenous peoples and being given to another group, right in front of them, without their permission, and the outside world expecting them to just take it. This is a conflict initially based on land that over several decades has morphed into a multi-pronged issue with multiple actors clouding and obscuring the crux of this issue. This leads to why peace attempts have always failed. Going back to 1947, the newly created United Nations, which aspired to be a kind of world government under Resolution 181 of the United Nations General Assembly, voted in favor of dividing the territory of historical Palestine into two states, a Jewish one and an Arab Palestinian one. 33 states voted in favor: the United States, the Soviet Union, and their respective allies, with 13 against: the Arab states plus India, Afghanistan, Iraq, Pakistan, Turkey, Greece, and Cuba. Resolution 181 allocated 56% of the territory, but that included the vast unpopulated Negev Desert for Israel, which at that time had a population of 498,000 Jews and 325,000 Palestinians, and 44% of the territory to the Palestinian state, with a population of 807,000 Palestinians and 10,000 Jews. If you do the math, that is some 500,000 Jews and over 1.1 million Palestinians in total. In May 1948, the State of Israel was created on a vast common area following the withdrawal of the United Kingdom and its troops. The Oslo Accords were signed in 1993, which was hailed as a historic breakthrough. They were meant to bring about Palestinian self-determination in the form of a Palestinian state alongside Israel. This is where the aim to establish a two-state solution began. However, right-wing Israelis had no desire to give the Palestinians any concessions and did not want any agreements with the PLO, which they considered a terrorist organization. Israeli settlers also feared it would lead to their eviction from the illegal settlements in the occupied territories. The far right were so opposed to the Oslo Accords that Rabin himself was assassinated in 1995 for signing them. Among the people who had threatened Rabin before his death was Itamar Ben-Gvir, now Israel's national security minister. On the other side of the equation, Palestinian groups, including Hamas and the Islamic Jihad, warned that a two-state solution would forego the right of Palestinian refugees to return to the historic lands seized from them in 1948 when Israel was created. Even the late Edward Said, a prominent literary critic and activist, was opposed to the two-state solution, calling it an instrument of Palestinian surrender, a Palestinian Versailles. This conflict always goes back to 1948 because this is the time for which most Arabs see the creation of Israel as an entity of foreign nations that used the decline of the Ottoman Empire as a way to begin their colonialist ways in the region and essentially steal land. Some may not want to see it as that basic, but it is. The Oslo Accords witnessed a slow decline, with Israel continuing its occupation of Palestinian land and refusing to withdraw militarily from the majority of the West Bank while continuing to conduct raids into land considered under the full administration of the Palestinian Authority. Following Rabin's death, a number of Israeli leaders who opposed the accords came to power, among them the current Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, as well as Ariel Sharon. As the Oslo Accords slowly broke down, Israel tripled its settlement building. Between 1993 and 2000, the Israeli population in the West Bank reached its fastest pace of growth ever. The Camp David Summit in 2000 sought to address the contentious issues of borders, refugees, and Jerusalem. Despite promising negotiations, failure to find common ground resulted in increased tensions and violence, eventually leading to the Second Intifada. From 2005 to today, the international community has demanded that Palestinians put an end to terrorism and hold democratic elections, which took place in 2005 and 2006. These elections were the most open and competitive of all the Arab world, with many outside bodies monitoring their process to ensure election integrity, democratic processes, etc. Observation of the 2005 Palestinian Authority presidential elections ensured a smooth transition of power within the Palestinian Authority following the death of longtime leader Yasser Arafat. Hamas won a majority of seats in the 2006 Palestinian Authority Legislative Council election. In its preliminary statement, the Carter Center's observation mission found that the elections were conducted in line with international standards, though the Israeli occupation of the West Bank and Gaza continued to impose constraints on many of the Palestinians' fundamental freedoms, including the rights to assembly, movement, and speech. Everyone knew the result, and the international community, with its entirely irrational logic, reached the conclusion that since Hamas had won, it would not recognize the results. Israel and the West boycotted the Hamas-led government because Hamas's designation as a terrorist organization by the United States and the European Union.
So convenient.
In November 2007, the Annapolis Conference aimed to revive peace talks and address core issues, committed itself to delivering a Palestinian state in a period of 1 year. An agreement was reached in Annapolis to present a resolution regarding the matter before the UN Security Council, which was not even acknowledged by the Israeli opposition, with the conference coming to an end shortly after. In 2008, Hamas and Israel reached a bilateral agreement and ceasefire that lasted for 7 months. The basic agreement was that Hamas would cease attacks against Israel if Israel would stop the attacks against Gaza and open Gaza's borders. While this led to a 97% reduction in attacks against Israel, and vice versa, the amount of goods coming into Gaza was only 27% of normal levels. To put it simply, the blockage that Gaza was experiencing from Israel was affecting the citizens in Gaza, their ability to work, to get food, water, supplies, building materials, etc. While many want to condone the actions of Hamas, they are operating for their people that elected them. This is why the strangling by Israel in Gaza led to the ceasefire being unsuccessful, as Hamas began to respond to Israel's blocking of critical infrastructure and supplies in the only way they could. This then led to the Israeli operation Cast Lead in December 2008 and January 2009. The 3-week conflict resulted in the deaths of 1,440 Palestinians and 14 Israelis, left thousands injured, and caused widespread destruction in Gaza. Since Cast Lead, construction materials and other goods smuggled into Gaza through tunnels under the Egyptian border, together with very modest increases in imports through Israeli-controlled crossings, eventually enabled Palestinians to repair some of the physical damage from the war. However, of the nearly 3,500 homes destroyed, fewer than 500 have been rebuilt. And at the time of recording this video, we have no idea how many homes have been destroyed and how long it's going to take those to be rebuilt. More attempts at peace happened in 2013 and 2014 with the John Kerry-led negotiations Hope for Peace. However, the collapse of talks amidst mutual blame and the continued expansion of Israeli settlements eroded trust, further fracturing the chances of resolution. The Trump administration's peace plan, dubbed the Deal of the Century, proposed a new framework in 2020. While it aimed to settle long-standing disputes, the plan heavily favored Israeli interests, disregarded Palestinian aspirations, and was rejected by Palestinian officials. There are many factors that can be attributed to the failures of peace between Palestinians and Israelis. historical grievances, lack of mutual trust, unwillingness to compromise, ongoing violence, and the influence of internal and external political pressures. But one of the most overlooked factors is that of the Palestinians themselves. Real representation for Palestinians has not been present. They hold elections, yet the winners are conveniently disregarded, which is the most common way foreign entities and Israel has kept Palestinians out of the negotiating room. Labeling Hamas as a terrorist organization following the election is just one more example of that. And Israel is so overly funded and inflated by foreign interests that now too many have too much at stake to just let it go, which is why we are now on the brink of World War III. A dispute from 1948 that has never resolved, that is now buried in over 70 years of strife, turmoil, lies, propaganda, money, and resources. To say this conflict is difficult is an understatement. Who knows what the next weeks, months, years, and possibly decades will bring to this region? For the Arab world is waking up to the realities that Palestine was and always will be the precipice of the conflict for the Arab world, both within its borders and outside of it. Only time will tell what this renewed conflict, starting from October 7th, will bring. Well, thank you so much for watching. If you liked this video, please give it a thumbs up and also subscribe to the channel so that you don't miss out on new videos coming out every single week. And if you want to learn more about the situation that's happening in Palestine, feel free to check out these videos. As always, stay safe, take care, and be kind to each other. Aspirations and was rejected. While it aimed to settle long-standing disputes, the plan heavily favored Pumpkin, stop. Lily, what are you doing?